Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's town hall. My name is Rachel Linneman. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist and the director of the Children's and Emory Cystic Fibrosis Care Center. I also co-direct the Emory Therapeutics Development Center site, and I will be hosting tonight's webinar, Town Hall, about the Southeast CF Research Cooperative and the clinical research referral process. As people are joining, I'd like to start by thanking our Town Hall Planning Committee, most of whom is here with us on the line, as well as the Southeast CFF chapters who helped us put this together, and the CF Foundation for supporting this Town Hall series. Our speakers tonight do have a few disclosures to share. I receive grant support from the CF Foundation, NIH, and Vertex, and consulting support from Vertex, and Dr. Fowler receives grant support from the CF Foundation. Before we fully get started, I did want to remind everyone about the Zoom controls. Many of you have been on many Zoom webinars, but on the toolbar, you can use the chat button to chat with other attendees as well as panelists. And we ask that you submit all questions through the Q&A button on the toolbar. And the panelists will be able to see those questions and answer them at the end of the webinar. This slide is just to remind those of you who attended the last town hall and to share with those of you who are new to this town hall the objectives of this series. First, our goal is to familiarize you with the clinical research process and the Southeast Research Cooperative. We also want to familiarize you with how clinical researchers protect your safety and privacy. And lastly, to inform you about new areas of CF research and how you can hopefully become involved. This town hall series consists of 4 town halls. The first one, which was recorded and will be available soon, covered informed consent and protection of your safety. Tonight's town hall with the star will cover the Southeast CF Research Cooperative, which is also called the SERC, and the research referral process. And the next 2 town halls will cover the CF drug development pipeline and CF genetic therapy. So we hope you'll be able to join us for those as well. Here is our agenda for tonight. After my brief introduction, Dr. Fowler will discuss the SERC. Then Eric Hunter, who's a research manager at Emory, and I will discuss what to expect when you join a referral study. We'll also hear from Nancy, a referral study participant, who will share her experience. And then finally, we'll have some time for question and answer. So again, please use that Q&A tab to submit your questions at any time during the webinar. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fowler.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Miles Fowler. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist, and I work at Children's of Alabama and UAB in Birmingham. And then I'd also like to introduce someone else who's here, but I won't ask her to introduce herself. Rachel Rich as one of our clinical research coordinators, and we work together at the Children's Research Unit at Children's. And we are the co-leads of the CF Foundation TDN Southeastern Regional Cooperative, or SERC or SERC, or just the co-op is what we call it. And we've been doing this since the fall of last year. And we want to tell you a little bit about what the cooperative is doing and how we can hopefully be of service to y'all. Yeah, thank you. You know, research might be new to some folks, and I just threw out a whole lot of acronyms. I'm talking about the CFF, which I think everybody's familiar with, the CF Foundation, but also the TDN might be new to some folks. So, you know, what we call the TDN is the Therapeutic Development Network. It's a large group of specialists and resources who support research all around the country, and they're all focused on cystic fibrosis. If you're looking at the little blue map, there's a little red dot, and I think most of the centers that are part of the TDN. But you might notice that not every CF center is part of the TDN. you might be looking at the map and you're thinking, oh, well, I go to, this care center here and I don't see a little red dot. And that's just because not every CF center where people go and get care is part of the therapeutic development network, even if they do research. So they're not all CF research is supported or sponsored by the TDN. So you might be at a center that does research, but you haven't heard of the TDN at all. There's also centers where they're more focused on clinical care or just quality improvement, different kind of research that might not involve like introducing new treatments or introducing new medications to people with CF. And then wherever you are, regardless, the CF Foundation and the TDN or the CF Foundation wants you or people with CF or their families with CF to have access to these resources, these research resources, so that you could potentially contribute to studies that make life better for people who have CF and their families. So that's a little bit about the TDN. And then here is our little corner of the region. So this was a map that got made last year when they first started talking about having, instead of, a whole big wide TDN all across the country, they said, well, let's start to kind of pair up in our smaller regions or our smaller communities and see if we can work more closely together. Like I mentioned, some centers are part of the TDN and some are not. And we want to make sure that everybody, even if they're not one of these TDN centers, wherever you are, you have access to the research that's going on. So in the Southeast, we have a little stretch going all the way from Texas to Florida. And, we just happen to be right smack dab in the middle in Birmingham. But we've got centers like Southwestern in Dallas, Tulane and Oshner in New Orleans and Shreveport, and then the folks at UK in Lexington, the folks at UMMC in Jackson, TC Thompson's in Chattanooga, and the University of Tennessee in Memphis. Also, we have folks from Vanderbilt and Nashville who are part of this. Of course, I'm speaking from Alabama, but the centers at UAB and Children's are part of it, and then parts of Florida, including Nemours and Pensacola, and a few other centers join us from time to time. They kind of have one of their own regions, but they're also, pretty darn close to a lot of other folks in the southeastern region. So they join us fairly regularly. And then, where Dr. Linneman and Mr. Hunter speaking from is, Emory in Atlanta. And then we also have folks in Augusta, Georgia, which I used to live in, and I'm still a Georgia Bulldog. Go Dogs! Looking forward to the Ball State game. I can't hear your boos because you're muted. And then, all across these centers, it's doctors, it's researchers, it's research coordinators, CF center directors, program coordinators. It's all kinds of folks with all kinds of expertise. So I'm really excited to be a part of this group. The next question might be why. Why are we doing this? Really, it's all about you. It's all about the people joining tonight. It's about people with CF. It's about their families. We want everybody here in the Southeast to be able to contribute to, potentially benefit from research that's happening in our area. So the TDN has encouraged us, as all these centers in this region, research centers, not research centers, to get to know each other better, share our strengths with each other, and give more access to research opportunities. So there might be, you were looking at the map, there might be studies going on in Texas that people in Louisiana or Mississippi might be interested in, or studies going on in Atlanta that people in Birmingham might want to be a part of. And so with all of us getting together, we can talk to each other about, what's going on in our particular center, and see if anybody else would be interested in in participating. But we also have some freedom to do other things. Since the start, they've said, some of this is about research, but also talk to everybody in your region, see what they want to get out of this. And I think a big part of it that I've enjoyed is just the building relationships. I've practiced at a few centers in the Southeast. I did my original training in Augusta, Georgia. I grew up in Athens, Georgia, but did medical school in Augusta. I did my residency training, which is the next part of being a doctor, in Columbia, South Carolina, and then I came to Birmingham. So when it comes to the CF world, I get really excited every time I go to a conference and I see somebody from the Augusta Center or somebody from the South Center in Columbia, South Carolina. But I never got to meet a lot of the folks who, say, practiced in Dallas or Shreveport or parts of Kentucky. So it's really fun for me to get to know these folks and build these relationships. And so I think that's something we get out of it. And then we get a chance to learn from each other. We all do things a little bit different. We all have different expertise. So while we might be, for example, one center might be doing a lot of research on how to treat infections, you might they might learn a lot from maybe the folks in Augusta, where they like to do a lot of research about exercise in CF. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to learn from each other. And then what have we got done so far? So we started, around the same time last year, around October last year, had our first virtual meeting to get to know each other, talk about what we wanted to do. And then, not long after, we got to go to the CF conference and meet each other in person, and that was a lot of fun. And then talk about, face to face, what do we want to do? And since then, we've been trying to have a meeting just about every month, and we have talked about a lot of things that we're very excited about. We've been talking about, I'm sorry for putting too many abbreviations in here, but ETI, it's like modulators for people who have different kinds of mutations that you might not expect to respond to a modulator. Pharmacokinetics, that's a monster of a word, but basically that's, how does your body deal with the medicine when you take it? How do you metabolize it? How long does it stay in your body? What if you get this dose, what does that actually mean? Do you metabolize it too fast and you're only getting a little bit, or you metabolize it really slow, and even though you got the same dose as somebody else, there's a lot more of it in your body than your neighbor. So things like that. How do people respond to these new medicines? And then we've been talking a lot about how we refer patients from one center to another if they want to participate at a research study that's going on at somebody else's center, and how we can do that professionally and communicate with each other, and make sure, if somebody participated in a trial, how do we let their team know, and then how can their team communicate with us if there's problems with the trial or we need to address some issues. We've been talking about gene therapies, which is I know is a big topic at CF conferences, and something we're all excited to learn about. And then we've been talking about the education that we're working on right now, and then all kinds of other studies about how do we treat infections, exercise, things going on, and then also just learn how to communicate, because just talking about research makes some people nervous. So it's good for us to learn, how can we talk to our patients and their families about research? How can we answer their questions? How can we not do doctor talk all the time and speaking about these things in a way that's understandable, and that really lets us communicate potential risks and potential benefits well. And then just as a last little bit here, if you are hearing about the cooperative for the first time and you think, oh gosh, that's interesting, I want to know what they're doing in Tennessee, I want to know what they're doing in Pensacola, you can always talk to your provider about studies that are taking place in your area, your center or centers around you. You can also go to the CF Foundation website. They have a tool for finding trials that are close to you. It's that that little web link on that's blue. or you can go to clinicaltrials.gov is another website where you can find different trials going on, CF related or non-CF related studies. And thank you for joining us tonight.
All right, thanks, Dr. Feller. So I'll take over here. My name's Eric, as Rachel introduced. My name's Eric Hunter. I'm a lead research coordinator at Emory in Atlanta, along with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the logistics of referral studies, and a little bit more of the details involved there. So first of all, what is a referral study? We're throwing around that word. I want to make sure we're on the same page here. So this is any study or trial that involves participation at a site that is not your home care site. So anything that involves any kind of move anywhere else. Now, there are places in the country where if you're in Chicago, that may be across town. If you're in the Southeast, that means some travel and some more logistical work to be done. So some of the overall purposes of referral studies, and Dr. Fowler definitely touched on a lot of this. We want to find treatments efficiently, especially true these days where we're looking for treatments for those with rare gene variants or rare complications. And we also want to improve access to these studies to patients who may be at a site that's not a TDN site, not a research site, or as the last point says, not every site can run every study. That little blurb in the bottom corner there is, you don't need to worry about the details of that. Actually, Dr. Berlinski, Ariel Berlinski, is going to be talking about that. This is a snapshot, a small snapshot of the CF Foundation's therapeutics pipeline. So all those little bars are things that were in development as of the end of the year 2022. There's about 40 products there. He's going to talk about that in detail in 2 weeks from now. But just to say, there are 40 products in the works as of the end of last year, and it's just not feasible for every site to run every study. So we really got to cooperate to make these things happen. So as a trial site, the goals that the trial site will have for you coming in as a referral patient, are to make experience as easy as possible for you. It might not be quite as easy as this guy is making it look, but as best as we can to make it smooth and easy for you, and to ensure that you feel confident about your safety when you're participating. So how do referrals work? So I've broken this up into a few components of referral participation. Now, this is not necessarily completely linear, and it's not as distinct as these boxes make it look. There's some overlap and back and forth in how all this goes. But these are the segments that I'm going to be touching on. It's just the best way to package the information for you guys. So first of all, just going into recruiting and conversations. So how would you even find out about a referral study? So cooperations like this, the Southeast Regional Cooperative, we're collaborating actively to make sure we're aware of what each other is doing as a site, what studies we're participating in, and we may have patients that may suit your study, or you may have patients that suit our study. And then you also, number two here, you can also recruit sites as a patient. So Dr. Fowler touched on these sites as well. Clinicaltrials.gov is a government site that includes pretty much every clinical trial in the country. They have to be registered here so they can keep track of things. But the best way to find CF trials is using the trial finder. And we have that same URL there that Dr. Fowler linked. And that little clip is what the top of the clinical trial finder looks like if you go to the CF Foundation website. So when you get in touch with a trial site, there's really two ways you could get in touch. First of all, If you find a trial you're interested in yourself, you could certainly talk to your home care team, and they could reach out to a site running the trial. Also on the CF Trial Finder, you can look, the sites are listed there. They have direct contact information for the sites that are running that trial, so you can reach out directly to sites that way. Once you're in conversation, the initial discussion will just be about, the study background, the study timelines, some risk and benefits, some basic travel logistics, things like that, kind of high-level discussion. Also in that conversation would likely come up just confirming that the study we're talking about is a TDN sanctioned study. Now, if you find your study on the Trial Finder, it is 100% going to be TDN sanctioned. There's certainly worthwhile research that's not TDN sanctioned, but really what that means to be TDN sanctioned is that it's gone through extra reviews by the foundation, by the TDN, reviews looking over safety, the importance of the study, the scientific merit of the study. It's just a very well-vetted study if it's TDN sanctioned, and it is always created and tailored to considerations for referrals, because the TDN knows how important those are to get these studies done. So also in these initial conversations, they'll include sharing approved information and documents, especially informed consent documents for you to review. You'll be given time to consider these, look over the documents, talk to your family, talk to your home care team about the study, and just given time to come up with questions and more thoughts you have for the trial team. So usually there's just a period of time for review, and then the trial site will follow up with you, something like a week, 2 weeks, whatever you think you need to review the information, just to talk further about the study. And it's important to note that first point there, that if the trial is not the right trial for you, that is okay. You could look through the information and decide, this is not what I'm looking for, or this may not be the right time for you. Not every study is right for every patient, even if you qualify, and not every time is right for every patient. Even if you would qualify and you'd like to do it, sometimes it's just not the right time. And that's okay. Other points about follow-up contact, though, if you have more questions, you just need to find out more. You certainly can be asking the trial site at that point. They can address those questions. If they need to look into some more details, they can dig out answers for you and get back in touch with you. Also, that would involve talking through some more details of the trial site's own situation, as well as your own schedule. That point is mainly about every site has their own logistical things to work through. There could be, for example, a study that has a very specific test and they have to schedule it, and they can only schedule it on Thursday afternoons or something like that. That kind of stuff will be coming up in these initial conversations. That's not a highly likely situation, but that's something that could come up every now and then in a study. Also, if it's a complex study, it's possible to arrange a call with you, with your local provider, and with the study staff, so everyone can be in communication from the beginning, and just address any concerns and just talk over everything, make sure everyone's on the same page. And then after all of this, if you're interested in moving forward with participation, then we would move forward towards pre-screening. So pre-screening, what is pre-screening? Really all that means is, do you qualify to screen? It's the trial site doing their due diligence to look through your medical records to make sure that it looks like you have a very good chance of qualifying for the study once you come to your screening visit. So in order to do that, the trial site will request the records from your home site. And that, of course, requires a medical records release form. You can't just share your information just we want to, or even if because we're CF buddies in different sites and we know each other, we got to make sure we are protecting your information. So the trial site usually can handle this, put together a medical records release form. We'll share that with you. You review it, and then you would need to sign it to make it valid. And then the trial site would be in communication with your clinic to go through whatever pathways your clinic needs in order to get those records that we need to take a deeper dive into to make sure it looks like you will qualify. So as a trial site, the trial site will review those records, and if there's any questions they have, they'll follow up as needed. Oh, I kind of jumped over that second point there. It's important to note, often it's a very good idea for the trial site team to request a designated point of contact from your care team. This could be like it could be a nurse, it could be a research coordinator at your home site, someone that we can get into contact with quickly so we can get the information that we need quickly. And that's important in pre-screening, and it's also more important even down the line once you're in the study, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But once it looks like you're eligible based on all the reviews, then the logistics moves towards travel and scheduling. So travel. So how does travel work? This can vary certainly by site and by study, but the trial site's there to help you through all of this. Typically, things that are covered by studies include the transportation there, so that can be flights, buses, rental cars, your personal car mileage, hotel stays if that's needed for the study, local parking at the site, at the study site, or taxis if you didn't drive, as well as meals while you're in town for the study visit. All of that kind of information should be described at least to some degree in the consent form, what is covered and what is not. Things like expense limits are usually listed there. And it's also a good idea to ask about what is prepaid versus what is reimbursed. I think most of the time you would be able to have things like flights covered up front, so you wouldn't have to come out of pocket, and then things. Hotels maybe 50-50 depending on the study and depending on the site, which way it goes. And meals are often reimbursed after the fact. So it's important to know what's what and what you would need for it to logistically work out for you, as well as a time frame for reimbursement. So then more about travel. Now, once all those arrangements are made, when you're traveling, the trial site will provide you with directions and other instructions. And they'll also give you contact information so that you can reach somebody after hours if needed. You know, you're not always traveling during the business day. So, you know, in the event of something going sideways while you're traveling, you want to have a line of communication that someone at the site can help you out. In some studies, there may be a travel agency actually that is contracted to do this, and they may have that contact information to have the best person to help you be with the travel agency. That would depend on the study and the site. Another couple notes here is that the screening visit is often scheduled on its own. Most of the time, we as a trial site would like to make sure that you pass the screening and you get to go on to the study in full. And then once you're there and you're starting the study, the subsequent visits, usually there's a pretty good calendar that's laid out, and the subsequent visits can get booked farther in advance since you have a schedule kind of laid out in front of you. Then once you're in the study visits, if you have been involved in a study at your home site, it would likely runs very similarly. Most of these trials are built in very similar ways. So the experience may be pretty similar, but every site, of course, has their nuances. And coming to a new site with all that travel and everything can be a little bit confusing and disorienting at first, but it can become more familiar and routine once you've come 2 or 3 times. And this was the point at which, once you've had a couple of study visits, this is the point at which we hope we're settling into a pretty good routine. And if there's a treatment on the drug, you're tolerating that well, and things are going smoothly. Along the way, the trial site will provide you with information and reminders for your study visits. Just check in with you, make sure the travel arrangements are all okay, and things like that. But it's also very important to keep that line of contact going between you as a participant and the study team in between visits, so we can keep track of just how you're doing and just make sure things are going okay. And if there's anything that comes up, that you can reach us anytime you need to. And with that bit of info about communication, I'll hand it over to Dr. Linneman to talk a little bit more about communication.
Great, thanks, Eric. So I'm going to talk about communication and safety. So after your screening visit, the study doctor is going to assess all your study tests to be sure that you qualify for the study. And the trial site will then notify your care team that you've enrolled in the study. But there are certain situations where study tests, such as labs or other procedures, may result abnormally. And in that case, someone may not be able to enroll. Or as another scenario, you might have your screening visit and then get sick before enrolling and not be able to enroll right away. So in that case, we would also let your team know that you were unable to enroll. And luckily, many studies will allow you to rescreen again at least once if that does happen. So even if for some reason you're unable to enroll, it doesn't mean that you will never be able to participate in the study. The trial site will also notify your care site when you complete the study, or if you have to leave the study for some reason early. That might be due to your own choice, like it's a long study and you have an unexpected job change that changes your ability to participate. Or it could be because the study physician recommends stopping the study because of a safety concern. And lastly, the trial site will also request information from your care site about any changes in care or treatments that occurred during the study. For safety-related communications, your consent form will include a 24-hour emergency study doctor contact number, and that's for any safety-related concerns. It is important to remember, though, that the study doctor does not replace your home care team for CF treatment during the trial. So you typically will continue all routine local clinic visits, sick visits, or sick calls while you're in a trial. But we will ask you to notify the trial team of any new symptoms, so we can determine if they may be related to the study or not, and any new treatments, so we can ensure that there's safety, that there's not any interactions or something like that. Your study physician will also partner with your local team for any safety concerns that may arise during the study. So for example, the study doctor may ask you to be evaluated locally due to a new cough. And then the study doctor would provide guidance based on what's known about the study medication to your local team. And as Eric mentioned, establishing those clear contacts in both directions is very important for logistics, but also for any safety issues that arise. So you want to make sure that the referral trial site has contact information for a physician or a nurse practitioner at your local site or the clinic coordinator, and vice versa. You want them to have the referral site's contact information. Another safety point to be aware of is that many studies are blinded, which means the trial site may not know if you're receiving a placebo or if you're receiving the investigational treatment. But we wanted you to know that this can typically be unblinded in the rare case where it's needed to be unblinded for patient safety, and the team would be able to find out what you are on. And then lastly, you should know that your study results, such as a study pulmonary function test, for example, are often not able to be shared with you directly during the study or with your local site. But again, if any safety concerns arise, your study doctor will make sure you receive clinical evaluation and treatment. So in summary, referral studies are very important to help us find new CF treatments. A TDN trial referral site will support you with the logistics of travel and the costs. Your safety is top priority. And then lastly, your trial team will communicate frequently with you and with your care team. So next, I'd like to introduce Nancy. Nancy receives care at the Minnesota CF Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And she was a referral participant in an Emory clinical trial here in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're so thrilled that Nancy could join us tonight to share her participation experience and answer any questions that you have. Welcome, Nancy.
Hi.
Hi, Nancy. So I was just going to ask you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and also just how you found out about the referral study, what made you decide to join. Just like to know your experience.
All right. I am Nancy. I am going to be 43 on Monday. My sister and I both have CF, and I was diagnosed when I was 11 and my sister was 10. I'm married. I have 2 kids, 2 dogs, house in the suburbs, all that stuff. I run my own business, so I work from home, which helps with managing my treatments and, putting myself first, and timing. That's also helped with planning ahead for the study. I found out about the referral study, I think actually from another CFer on Facebook that told me about it, that knew I was kind of looking for some studies. And I think I had also seen it later on a CF trial alert that I had signed up for that will email you when there's alerts for new trials that are, coming down that you might be able to do. And I wanted to do the study like immediately, just because I was really hoping it would be something that would benefit my sister and I, so that was a no-brainer for me. But the concerns I had, I guess, would be traveling. I have anxiety, so I don't even like flying, but, traveling by myself solo and then leaving my kids and my husband and the dogs at home. So that, I guess I felt more comfortable once I got used to, I kind of planned ahead and looked at the airport, and planned the same hotel. So I knew where I was going every time, got familiar with it. I knew the hotel, had food or had Starbucks in the lobby, things that were important to me for, everyday routine. And then transportation, when I got there, I didn't want to rent a car because that gives me anxiety too. So I had the best experience was Uber, but not just the regular Uber. It was the Uber Comfort or something like that, because I had personally better experience with the drivers going that route. And then I felt comfortable using it, which was easy to do. And then those are my main concerns. And then I guess having my husband plan ahead so that once we had the dates down for the trial, we could plan ahead. I made sure he was going to be home and not traveling. So I had somebody here for sure with my kids where they weren't going to be sad. My dogs would be fine.
Right.
And it's fine. And then I was able to book the trips really quick, where it was just a one night, so it's you get there, you're at the airport, fly into the hotel, plan your meal, make sure you have food, do your best. And then, go to bed, wake up, another vest, and go into the appointment for the trial, or for the study. And it made it go by pretty quick. And then I guess, let's see, that's kind of the gist of it. And then it just kind of became a routine where you know what's expected. I think if you can't handle things you can't control, like a flight delay here and there, because I would plan to do my second vest when I got home late in the evening, since I didn't have a hotel room 2 nights. So just maybe plan kind of for that, how that's going to work. And then see, I think the other advice I guess I have on anybody considering doing one of the trials is to just, planning ahead helps, and then research to make sure you're picking a hotel that you feel safe and comfortable that's probably by the clinic. Look at a map, look online first, do a little research, or have Eric or Ashley or somebody help with that, because they know the area. If you're not there, you don't really know the area. Let's see. I think that was all I had. And then just make sure you eat your meals so that you don't wait an hour for Uber Eats, because I did that a couple times, and otherwise I think
that's a good thought. Well, that's good. That's a lot of really good information. So you said you have anxiety just generally about travel. Did it, by the second or third trip, did it feel like it was getting routine? I know your study was not overly long. Did it feel routine by the time you'd gotten into it?
I was fine after I did it once, because I have to just, because then I know what's coming, right? I knew the airport, or, where to find the rental car, or the, I don't know what they call it when it's like Uber ride shares, like where to go. And I also personally just get turned around in some of the airports if I'm not familiar with them. And so if you're used to like traveling with somebody, it's like you have to carry all your own stuff around, and you can't check your vest machine and all that stuff. So just kind of carrying all that around and having a plan for it, and knowing, oh, it's not that bad. And once I get there, I'm fine. So I feel like once I got there and I had a hotel that I'm like, yep, this hotel feels safe, and this is how I'm going to do the transportation, and I know where I'm going. I know how much time I have so that I get to my appointment on time. Then I think just planning ahead worked for me to help with that.
Yeah, good. That's good to know that you were that comfortable that quick, and you had travel anxiety to begin with. That's very good. I was going to ask you a little bit about just how you experienced any of the communication in general. I know we were kind of harping on the communication concept, because it's pretty important that we know where each other is in the whole process. How was that in general?
It was super easy. I was in contact with you and Ashley and Dr. Linneman, and then my own clinic too. And we had Dr. Linneman and my doctor in contact a few times when needed. I think right before I went, I don't remember if it was the initial assessment to see if you qualify for the trial, or if it was after that, where we thought we were going to have to delay it, because it must have been to start the actual study, because my PFTs were down, and we just wanted to make sure it was going to be safe, and that I didn't need antibiotics or do anything different before going. And I think I was able to work with both of them, were in contact with each other and myself, and and I was able to get my PFTs where everyone felt safe with me traveling and being able to participate. And but they definitely, you guys all kept my best interest and my safety came first, because they're easy to talk to, knowledgeable, totally passionate about what you do. So it makes it I guess easy for me to be in contact with you guys. And I don't know, the appointments were enjoyable. They weren't so bad. So
Nancy, this is Marty Solomon. I had a question for you. We appreciate you speaking. One thing that comes up for some people is a referral study maybe represent two things. One is have to overcome the concern about going to another site, but also maybe the first time that participate in a study. I'm wondering if this was your first time to be involved with a research study, and if so, how did you overcome that that kind of concern in your mind and reconcile that?
I think it was, besides, I think I did a nasal cell study or something before. So that never really counts, but that was a time deal. No, I mean, I had read enough about the study where I knew what it was and understood it, and I understood what I'd be doing and any risk involved or anything. I felt completely comfortable. I wasn't worried that I would have any issues. I felt safe doing it. I was actually personally really excited and thankful to have that opportunity to participate in it. Because I was looking for, there's just so much out there, right? And looking for a study that would have something that would help my sister and I, hopefully. So then that's what I was looking for. And I think there's so much out there. I've been looking now too with new stuff coming down the pipeline, and I'll get some alerts for some of the new technology that's coming in, the new treatments, which I'll have to look into later too. But I would totally do another one again if it's something that I think like there's a good chance it's going to be helpful or help develop, the drug or whatever you guys are working on. People have to participate in it for us to figure out like what mutations are responding to things and what works. So
if you were to think a little bit about what resources you've learned now to help you think about future studies, what resources have you found to be very helpful to connect you with for referral? Because I think the type of CF you have may be a rarer type, and so therefore referral may be part of the process to get access to those studies.
I know there's a lot out there for like some of the rare mutations, which was what I had been looking for. And I know there's other stuff coming for one of my other mutations actually specifically, but there's other ones, out there. So if it's something I think that's coming, and I'll research it again probably and learn about if it's a drug or I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff I've looked about too that you guys are probably working on for. But yeah, I guess I would, if you feel comfortable with what it is and understand it, and ask questions if you're not comfortable or you don't understand what it is that you'll be possibly taking or participating in. I think most of the concerns, if you're not sure about something, just ask and understand it better.
Nancy, I was going to ask, did you end up reaching out to your own team before you reached out to us to talk about the study, or did you reach out to us first?
No, I reached out to you guys first. And actually, I reached out to you guys first, but my email went to somebody's junk mail and they responded like months later when they found it by accident. So if you reach out to somebody, follow up, which I normally do, but I don't know why I didn't actually follow up on that one. But yes, if you don't hear back, follow up, because somehow, I don't know, could be in junk mail. They want to hear from you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think if it is a more complex study where somebody does feel, perhaps more nervous about participating, going and talking to their primary team is always a really good option too, because they'll be, especially if they're in the Southeast Regional Collaborative, we all know each other now, and we can easily, help you get more information. As Eric mentioned, kind of jump on a 3-way call to discuss a study. So if the study is more complex and you don't feel comfortable reaching directly out to a site, that's always another option too, to talk to your provider first, and then they can help facilitate.
I'd be interested to hear from any of the speakers what resources you all recommend, and could you reemphasize what resources might be good for folks to follow if they're thinking about studies but want to know what the full options are for them based on their mutation type or levels of CF, aspect of CF, that kind of thing.
Oh, is that
so I think oh, go ahead.
No, I'm good. I just didn't understand.
Yeah, I think talking to your team is always a great way to start, because they can, if you tell them you're interested in research, then they can take that on. Your site may have a research coordinator, they may not, and your physician or nurse may be the ones looking at some of the sites for you. But starting by letting your team knowing that you have interest, and then the best tools are probably the clinical trial finder that was mentioned, that's CF specific and TDN specific. And you can actually put in, how far away you want to travel, what mutations or variants you have, and even what type of study you're interested in. So if you're interested in a genetic study or interested in an inflammation study. And that website will also give you some very basic inclusion criteria. So if you need to have a certain lung function, if you need to be a certain age, if you need to have a certain bacteria on your respiratory cultures, that CF Foundation website will share those things with you. The NIH-sponsored clinicaltrials.gov website is also a great tool. It's a little bit less user-friendly, but if you don't see what you're looking for on the CF Clinical Trials Finder, or you just want more detail, the clinicaltrials.gov will go into a little more detail, I would say.
It's important to know that the clinical trials website, the clinicaltrials.gov, has every trial that's registered in it. The CF website is focused mostly on those that are TDN sanctioned, which means that the CF Foundation is sort of sponsoring in part or has sanctioned the sponsored study. So it may be a little bit more limited, but as Dr. Linden was saying, it's much more user-friendly and maybe more helpful as a starting point. Others that wanted to respond to that question, Eric or Dr. Fowler?
Yes, and I was also I was going to say clinical trial finder also same, and then I saw there's a question in the Q&A that's asking about age. Is that the one you're doing next?
That's what we're coming to next. Yes, if you guys want to respond about the resources, then we'll go to that question from the Q&A.
Sure, yeah. Talk to your provider, and they can tell you what's going on at your center. If they're part of one of the centers that are in our collaborative, then they'll have some information too about what's going on at another center that's in our cooperative. The clinical trials finder is a good way to find the DDN sponsored studies, and then clinicaltrials.gov. I think those are when we talked to all the providers in the region. I think those were the number one ways that we were aware of trials. So I think that's a great way to find what you're looking for. And if you don't see what you're looking for, yeah, talk to your provider and say, hey, I want to do studies on research, on exercise. Tell me what's out there. And I think they'll be able to help you.
So we did have one Q&A from the attendees, and this question gets at the principle of inclusion and exclusion criteria and asks about minimum age for studies. And so I'll invite any of the panelists to answer that question about age for studies and other inclusion and exclusion criteria for these types of studies.
Sure. So I can start. So it definitely varies study to study. Sorry if I cut out there. My phone went a little goofy. It varies from study to study. A general rule, if we've touched on the phases of studies, there are generally 3 phases of studies before there's a potential approval. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The earlier the phase, generally the higher the age that you need, the higher the minimum age. A lot of the studies that we do in CF tend to start at 18 plus, especially speaking of drugs, clinical trials that just study new drugs. 18 plus is a starting point, and they often will go down to then 12, and then they kind of will slowly go down. Usually from 12, it'll go down to 6, and then it may go down a couple of years at a time there. Safety being of the utmost most priority as you reduce in age, even like all the more so. So that is how it goes. I would say most of the time, if you're looking at about a phase 3 trial, a lot of times they tend to be 12 and up if it's a pretty standard medication. Now that's probably going to be different maybe in some of the newer gene therapy trials. There's going to be probably even more caution involved in those. But there's a wide variety, just depending on there's a wide variety of other inclusion, exclusion, just depending on what type of drug is involved. And it could be something very nuanced that seems very strange, which could have something to do with the interaction of the drug with just how your body works. So you may have seen studies where you're not allowed to drink grapefruit juice, and it just seems very strange, but it's just because of the way it's metabolized compared to your body trying to break down the drug. And so there are some strange things involved as well, but you can always reach out to a trial site. They will have all of that information about a specific study.
Other inputs from the panelists?
Yeah, so I agree. Most of the genetic therapy studies are going to be 18 and older to start. But remember, we have all different types of studies. So if you've never participated in a study, there are studies that are even observational studies where you may give a sample or you may fill out questionnaires. maybe you get a mild procedure like a sweat test or a breathing test. So we have studies that are, more simple, more straightforward, that often have broader age ranges, but are still addressing really important questions, all the way to sort of probably the most complex studies, which would be, in adults 18 and older to start, like genetic studies. So, think about, what you're ready and willing to try, and we probably have a study that fits that need. Or you may be really interested in a particular topic. Maybe you're really interested in diabetes, or you're really interested in exercise, and each of those studies may have different inclusion criteria.
Yeah, and I'll just agree with Dr. Linneman and Eric that, I'm a pediatrician and so is Dr. Linneman. There's studies for children as well as there are for adults. And, there might be different opportunities, but there's opportunities for everybody out there.
Great. We're nearly at the hour, so I wanted to conclude by asking each of the panelists just to give their advice on those that may be thinking about a referral study outside of their own center, or just thinking about research for the first time. If they would please give your advice on from your perspective on patients or family members thinking about that possibility.
Sure. I would just sum it up with communicate. There's your care team is going to be there to talk to you about things, and a trial site will be there to talk to you about things. You don't have to be concerned about being judged, about being hesitant. It's very natural to be hesitant. It's a commitment. We just want to try to make things as easy as we can and just communicate. We're always here to answer questions. Your care site, your care team would be as well.
Can we hear from our panelist, Nancy, about her thoughts about folks that are considering a first study?
Just, research the study, ask questions, and if it's something you feel comfortable doing, make time to do it.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Fowler or Dr. Linneman?
Yeah, I'd say there's all kinds of studies. Some are short, one visit and just questions, no poking, no prodding, no pictures, no blood. If you've never done research before and just the thought of it makes you nervous, do something short and simple, and then you'll kind of see how it works, and you'll get to know the research team and, see who we are and how we interact with folks and how we take care of you. So I think, or if you're all about getting invasive, you can go deep, but I'd start simple.
Yeah.
And I would just add,
Yeah.
I've had participants tell me, as we were talking about a study, I wasn't sure I wanted to do the study, but then I talked to my friend whose child did this study, and they just had such wonderful things to say about it, and they felt like they were really contributing to treatment progression in cystic fibrosis. And so, ask your friends if they've participated in a study, hear their perspectives on what it was like, and how they found it valuable, either for their own child or for themselves, or just this feeling of really helping others and contributing. And if you don't know somebody who's participated in a study, you can always also ask your team, hey, is there someone I could talk to that might be willing to talk to me about participating? So use those resources as well. I do see a final question. Can you share the website name that lists the different studies? So I'm trying to think if there's a way that we could actually send that out to all attendees. We'll look into that, but we can also type it here. And if you Google CF Foundation Clinical Trial Finder, I believe it would probably be the first thing that would pop up. So I think Dr. Solomon may be typing that into the chat, and I'll take the opportunity to end the session. We want to thank all of you for joining us, those who are joining live and those who may be watching the recording. Thank you to our speakers, especially to Nancy for taking time out of her busy life to join us. We really appreciate having your perspective. And again, thank you to the organizers as well. Great. Have a great evening, everyone. We hope to see you at the next town hall in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.